I always thought my marriage to Sarah was solid. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we managed to keep things on an even keel. We had been together for over 5 years, married for 3, living in a cozy little house in the suburbs of Seattle. On the surface, we were the quintessential couple. We went to dinner parties, traveled occasionally, and even had our friends telling us how lucky we were to have found each other. But recently, I started noticing a shift in Sarah's behavior. It was subtle at first. She became more distant, often distracted by her phone, a trend that started out with her working late more often. Little things began to add up. She started putting on more makeup for work, wearing clothes that hugged her body tighter, and occasionally mentioning that she had a new friend at the office. I found myself brushing off that nagging feeling in my gut. Sarah always insisted I was being paranoid whenever I shared my concerns, teasing me about my imagination. I wanted to believe her, but the signs were there, waiting for me to pay attention. One evening, while I was cleaning up the kitchen, I found an unfamiliar perfume bottle tucked away in the back of the drawer. It was a scent I had never seen in our house before. When I asked her about it, she shrugged it off as a gift from a coworker, her tone dismissive. I wanted to challenge her more, but then doubt crept in. Maybe it was just a thoughtful gesture from someone at work. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that our life together was unshakable. However, the gut feeling didn't fade. One Sunday, I decided to surprise Sarah with a late brunch. I made my way to her office, excited to see her and treat her to some time together. When I got there, I saw Sarah's car parked outside, but the office was dark, and there were no signs of life. As I walked around, I glanced through the windows and noticed her sitting at a table with a guy I'd never seen before. They were laughing, leaning in close to each other, and the way they interacted made my stomach drop. I felt sick. An overwhelming wave of betrayal crashed over me. I turned on my heel and walked back to my car, my mind racing. I was angry, confused, and hurt. It was all too surreal. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, just staring at the dash, trying to process everything. I mean, how could she do this to me? The woman I trusted, who I thought was my partner in life, was out there betraying me. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I acted normal around Sarah, but inside I was stewing over what I had seen. I started gathering information, going through her texts when she left her phone unattended, looking for any clues. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence started piling up. Late-night phone calls, secretive texting, and her mood swings became more pronounced. I finally had enough. I confronted her one evening when she came home late again. "Do you want to tell me what's going on, Sarah?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. She looked caught off guard, her eyes wide as if I had slapped her. "Nothing's going on," I told you. "I've just been busy," she shot back defensively. I could feel the tension rising in my chest. This wasn't the tone of a woman who was innocent. "Busy? Busy doing what? I see the way you've been acting. You think I don't notice?" My voice was louder than I intended. I could see her lip quivering, a mix of fear and defiance. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, crossing her arms. "Ridiculous? I saw you with that guy at your office," I yelled, the moment of confrontation finally bursting forth. Her face went pale, and for a brief second I thought I might actually see guilt flash across her features. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her bravado faltering for the first time. I went on to describe what I had seen, hoping to catch her in a lie, but instead she became defensive, throwing out excuses that sounded rehearsed. "He's just a friend. You're being paranoid. You don't trust me at all, do you?" The anger inside me turned to despair. I didn't even know what to say in response. I felt a mix of rage and sadness wash over me. She was lying, and deep down I knew it. The confrontation left me feeling hollow, as if I had lost something deep within myself. I found myself questioning every moment we had shared, every laugh we'd had, and every promise she had made. My trust shattered. I knew I had to figure out what to do next. I had been betrayed, and now it was time to take action, time for revenge if she was going to treat our marriage like this. As I sat on the couch that night trying to comprehend the situation, I felt a surge of determination. I was not going to let her get away with this. I would use her own games against her. This was my life, my heart she was playing with, and I was ready to take back control. I just had to figure out how. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a blur. I was living in a haze, going through the motions while my mind constantly replayed Sarah's words, her lies. I had invested so much in our marriage, and now it felt like I was holding the shattered pieces of a mirror, reflecting a distorted version of the life we'd built together. Every glance at her made my blood boil with anger and betrayal, but I also felt a chilling resolve building inside me, something primal that urged me to take action, to get even. I spent hours devising my plan. Revenge, in my mind, had many forms, but I wanted it to be something that would shake her to her core. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to feel the betrayal she had inflicted upon me. Part of me hoped that maybe this would wake her up, make her realize what she was throwing away. I began watching her more closely, trying to uncover any inconsistencies in her behavior. One evening, she left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter while she took a shower. It was a gamble, but I grabbed it and unlocked it using her Face ID. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the first step in my plan. I scrolled through her messages, my heart racing with anticipation. There it was, a thread of texting that confirmed my worst fears. The guy she had been with at the office, Mike, was the main culprit, and their conversations were laced with flirtation and plans to meet up. The more I read, the more my heart sank. They shared inside jokes, and she was using pet names for him that made me feel sick. "Can't wait to see you later, stud," read one of the messages. I felt a tidal wave of anger crash over me. I quickly placed the phone back on the counter, knowing that this was just the beginning of my revenge. I decided to play it cool, keeping my emotions in check while I plotted my next move. The following week, I feigned nonchalance, asking Sarah about her day and pretending everything was normal. It was interesting to see her squirm under the facade of normalcy. I even went so far as to suggest that we should throw a dinner party for our friends that weekend. She looked surprised but agreed, likely thinking that our relationship was on the mend. In truth, it was only the calm before the storm. The day of the dinner party arrived. I went through the motions, cooking and cleaning, but my mind was racing with thoughts of how I would reveal the truth. I invited a few close friends over, some who had known us for years. Sarah was in her element, charming everyone while I played the supportive husband. The atmosphere was light, laughter filled the room, and for a moment I could almost forget the betrayal. But that feeling didn't last long. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed freely, I noticed Sarah becoming increasingly flirty with one of our friends, Jake. It was subtle but enough for me to see the familiar glimmer in her eye, one that I had seen directed at Mike. I felt a surge of rage, but I held it in check, knowing it was all part of the game I was now playing. Finally, I decided it was time to drop the bombshell. I waited until the moment felt right, the laughter quieting down as everyone was lost in conversation. I stood up, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey everyone, I have something to share." The room fell silent, eyes turning toward me. "I know Sarah has been busy lately," I said, watching her expression change as she sensed the shift in my tone. "But I think it's time you all knew the truth about her recent friendship with Mike." I saw Sarah's face pale, her mouth opening in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she interjected, her voice rising. I continued, ignoring her protests. "I found her texts with him. The flirting, the plans to meet, all of it. It's been going on right under my nose." The gasps from my friends filled the room, their eyes darting between Sarah and me, shocked at my revelation. The silence that followed felt heavy as I watched Sarah's reaction. She went from confusion to anger in a matter of seconds. "This is ridiculous. You're twisting things, you have no proof," she shouted, her face flushed with rage. "Proof?" I laughed bitterly. "I have every text saved right here on my phone. You think I'd let this go without documentation?" I pulled out my phone, showing the messages to the group, and gasps echoed through the room as they read the words I had once wished I could unsee. Sarah's bravado began to crumble as the reality of her betrayal hit her like a ton of bricks. She turned to our friends, pleading, "You can't believe this. I can explain." But no one was buying her excuses. The tension in the room was palpable as my friends looked at Sarah with a mix of sympathy and disbelief. I felt a rush of power coursing through me. I was no longer the victim. I was finally reclaiming my narrative. In the aftermath of that explosive night, everything changed. My friends rallied around me, offering support and comfort as Sarah retreated into a shell of her former self. The facade she had carefully built began to crumble, and I reveled in the feeling of having the upper hand. Sarah tried to convince me it was a misunderstanding, that she had been just joking with Mike, but her excuses fell flat. I was done listening to her lies. Now I could see the cracks in her armor. The woman I thought I knew was fading before my eyes, and I was left with a choice. Did I want to salvage our marriage, or was this the final straw? I felt myself leaning toward the latter. The betrayal ran deep, and even with revenge in my heart, I needed to figure out my next steps. It was clear I had to be strong, not just for myself but for my self-respect as well. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long and painful road ahead. In the days that followed the dinner party, Sarah's true colors began to show. The aftermath of my revelation hung in the air like a dense fog. She was no longer the charming, playful woman I had married. Instead, she transformed into a defensive, desperate shell of herself. I was struck with a mix of emotions: anger at her betrayal, pity for the person she had become, and a strange sense of empowerment for taking control of my life. After the chaos of the dinner party, Sarah attempted to play the innocent victim. She tried to charm our friends into believing her own narrative, that I was the one overreacting, and that the messages with Mike were taken out of context. But I could see the cracks in her facade. The sweet, loving gestures she once offered felt forced and insincere. Whenever she tried to touch me or kiss me, I cringed, unable to shake off the feeling of betrayal that lingered like a bad taste in my mouth. One evening, as I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, Sarah approached me with her usual defeated demeanor. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I sighed, unsure if I wanted to hear any more of her excuses, but I nodded, curious about what she might say. "I know I messed up," she began, her eyes searching mine for a glimmer of understanding. "But I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just flirting. You have to believe me." I scoffed. "Flirting? Sarah, you were planning to meet up with him." "That's not just flirting, that's cheating. Please," she continued, her voice cracking. I was confused. I thought we were having problems and Mike was just being there for me. "Being there for you, so you decided to sleep with him instead of talking to me. That's your solution." My voice rose as I felt the anger bubbling up again. "I didn't sleep with him," she retorted, but the conviction in her voice was weak, almost as if she was trying to convince herself of her own innocence. "Then what was it?" I pressed. "What were you doing with him? What was all that talk about meeting up? You expect me to just overlook this?" "I'm sorry, okay?" she pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you." At that moment, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had loved this woman, even if she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. But the hurt was too fresh, too raw. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's clearly not." The anger drained from her face, and for the first time I saw her vulnerability. Maybe she truly was remorseful, but I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I had to think of my own well-being. As the days turned into weeks, I took time to reflect on our relationship. I began to focus on myself, rediscovering hobbies I had neglected while trying to keep Sarah happy. I spent more time with friends who supported me, allowing myself to heal from the emotional wounds that had been inflicted upon me. I even started hitting the gym more frequently, a way to channel my rage and frustration into something constructive. But there was a growing part of me that still wanted to make a point to Sarah. I didn't want her to think she could just walk away from this without consequences. Her betrayal had turned our life upside down, and I was determined to make her feel the impact of her actions. It was during one of my workouts at the gym that a thought struck me. What if I used her own insecurities against her? I knew she had always been competitive and self-conscious about her looks. I began to formulate a plan that involved playing into that insecurity, a way to show her how easy it was to be on the other side of betrayal. I started to casually flirt with the women at the gym. Nothing too serious, but enough to let Sarah see that I was moving on, or at least attempting to. I'd mention a casual conversation I'd had with a girl named Emily, who worked out on the treadmill next to me. I could see Sarah's expression darken whenever I brought it up, her jealousy rising to the surface. One night, I decided to take it a step further. I invited a couple of friends over for drinks, and I casually mentioned that Emily would be joining us. Sarah stiffened at the mention of her name. "Oh, really? I didn't know you were that close with her," she said, her tone laced with thinly veiled irritation. "Yeah, she's cool," I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral. "We've been talking a lot lately." By now, I knew exactly how to play my cards. I wanted Sarah to feel the same pangs of jealousy and insecurity that I had felt when she was with Mike. I wanted her to understand how it felt to be on the other side, where trust was shattered and every interaction was met with suspicion. When Emily arrived, I made a point to be attentive and engaging, showering her with compliments while Sarah watched from the sidelines, her discomfort palpable. I could see the tension building within her, and part of me felt vindicated. I was taking back my power, and it felt invigorating. After a couple of hours, Emily left, but not before planting a kiss on my cheek, a playful gesture that left Sarah fuming. Once the door closed, I turned to Sarah, expecting a reaction. "What was that all about?" she snapped. "What do you mean?" I feigned innocence. "We were just having fun." "It didn't look like just fun," she shot back, her frustration boiling over. "Really? Because it looked like you were having fun too with Mike," I countered. Her expression shifted, and for a moment I saw the realization hit her. She was beginning to understand what it felt like to be on the receiving end of betrayal and jealousy. "I can't believe you're doing this," she said, her voice trembling. "Believe it, Sarah. This is how it feels when you betray someone you claim to love." The argument continued for a while, but I could see the fight leaving her. I had made my point, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own narrative. But as the emotional games continued, I began to question if this was truly the way to resolve our issues. I wanted her to feel the hurt, but I also didn't want to become someone I was. I had started this path of revenge with a purpose, but I needed to decide if it was worth it in the grander scheme of things. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that while I enjoyed the thrill of the game, I also had to consider the future. Was there a path to healing, or was this just going to end in further destruction? I needed to figure out how to move forward, and soon. The emotional games I had started with Sarah took a toll on my psyche. The initial thrill of revenge began to morph into something I hadn't anticipated, a sense of emptiness. I found myself caught in a cycle of resentment and pain, and while I had taken control of my narrative, I was left wondering if it was worth it. The days turned into weeks, and Sarah seemed to be in a constant state of anxiety. The playful banter I had started with my gym acquaintances faded, and I realized that I was no longer just doing this for my own empowerment. I was engaging in a twisted game that kept both of us trapped in a cycle of mistrust and bitterness. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Sarah sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy from what looked like crying. I felt an unexpected twinge of sympathy. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "Nothing," she snapped, but the tremor in her voice told me otherwise. "Clearly something is wrong. You're not fooling me," I replied, crossing my arms as I leaned against the door frame. She looked at me, and for the first time in weeks I saw vulnerability instead of defensiveness. I can't take it anymore, okay? I know I messed up, but this isn't how I wanted things to go. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare." It was a moment of raw honesty, and it struck a chord within me. I had been so focused on my own hurt and revenge that I had overlooked how deeply this was affecting her. I had wanted her to suffer, to feel the weight of her betrayal, but now I was faced with the human side of the woman I had loved. "Then let's talk about it," I suggested cautiously, my anger subsiding as I saw the fear in her eyes. "We can't keep going like this. We need to decide what we're doing." "I don't want to lose you," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I made a terrible mistake, but I want to fix things. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The sincerity in her eyes caught me off guard. I had spent so much time thinking of ways to hurt her that I had neglected to ask myself what I truly wanted. Did I want to continue this futile game of revenge, or did I want to confront the reality of our situation? Sarah, I began slowly, choosing my words carefully. I can't just forget what happened. Trust doesn't come back overnight, but if you're genuinely willing to work on this, then maybe we can start from somewhere. Her face lit up with hope, and it was unsettling to realize that I still cared about her. Really? You'd be willing to try? Yeah, but it's going to take time. I'm not promising we can fix everything overnight, and I need you to be completely honest with me from now on. She nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her cheeks. I swear I will. No more lies, I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm committed to us. With a heavy heart, I felt something shift inside me. While I had initially embarked on a path of revenge, I began to see that the road to healing could be paved with honesty and vulnerability. It wasn't going to be easy, but perhaps there was a chance for redemption. We decided to schedule regular check-ins, where we could openly discuss our feelings without fear of judgment. The first few conversations were awkward and charged with tension. Sarah expressed her remorse, and I shared my pain while also acknowledging the lingering hurt I felt. It was a delicate dance, but slowly we started to reconnect. One night, as we sat on the couch after a long day, I turned to her and said, "You know, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to understand how it felt. I get that. And honestly, I've felt the weight of my actions every day. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted," she replied, her voice steady. It was during that moment that I saw a glimpse of the woman I had fallen for. All those years ago, she was vulnerable but also strong in her resolve to make things right. I found myself softening, wanting to believe that we could rebuild the shattered trust, but I also knew I had to be cautious. I had seen how quickly things could spiral out of control, and while I was willing to work on our marriage, I had to protect my own heart. As we continued to navigate our way through the aftermath of her betrayal, we both learned to communicate better. We scheduled weekly date nights where we could focus on each other without distractions. It wasn't always perfect. There were moments where the shadows of the past would rear their ugly heads, but we were both committed to the journey of rebuilding what had been broken. One Friday night, I surprised her by cooking dinner. I put a lot of effort into it, wanting to create an atmosphere where we could both relax and reconnect. As we sat down to eat, I couldn't help but smile at how far we had come. "Cheers to new beginnings," I said, raising my glass. She smiled back, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "I never thought we'd get here, but I'm so thankful we are. You mean the world to me." In that moment, I realized that while the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, we were finally learning to face them together. Instead of seeking revenge, we were actively working on rebuilding trust. I found solace in the fact that we were both trying to emerge from this stronger than before. Yet, deep down, I understood that while we were moving in the right direction, the specter of her betrayal still lingered in the background. I had to remain vigilant, aware that rebuilding trust was an ongoing process that required patience and commitment from both of us. But for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of hope growing within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could find our way back to each other after all. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah and I continued to work through the emotional fallout from her betrayal. It was a roller coaster ride, with moments of progress followed by setbacks that left us both reeling. I still felt the sting of her deception, but slowly she began to earn back my trust, piece by piece. Day by day, we established a routine that included open discussions about our feelings. We encouraged vulnerability, and I learned to articulate my thoughts and emotions better. Sarah was genuinely putting in the effort to show me that she wanted to make amends. We began to lean on each other in ways we hadn't before, both recognizing the vulnerability we had been too afraid to share previously. One evening, while we were curled up on the couch watching a movie, I turned to her and asked, "What do you think has changed in us?" She looked thoughtful for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "I think we're finally addressing our issues instead of sweeping them under the rug. I didn't realize how much I had taken our connection for granted until it was almost gone." "That's true," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. "But can we really say we've moved past the infidelity?" I still have moments where I freak out inside. I get that, she said, her expression sincere. It's going to take time, but I'm committed to working through it, even if it's uncomfortable. Those conversations became cathartic. For both of us, we no longer avoided the elephant in the room. Instead, we faced our issues head-on. But what I didn't expect was how unexpectedly healing it would be. I could see the spark of our relationship returning, a connection built on honesty and mutual respect. However, I still had some concerns deep down. As much as I wanted to believe that Sarah had changed, there was a fear that lingered in the shadows of my mind. I couldn't shake the thought that her betrayal could happen again. It was a dark cloud hovering over our newfound harmony. One Thursday, during a check-in, I decided to address my concerns openly. I still struggle with trusting you completely. I don't want to feel this way, but I can't help it. What can we do to ensure this doesn't happen again? I think it's healthy to talk about it, she said, her voice steady. I want to prove to you that I'm committed to being open and transparent, and I'll do whatever it takes. Will you let me see your phone? I know it sounds invasive, but I just need to know that there's nothing going on. I admitted, my heart racing as I waited for her reaction. She hesitated, looking conflicted. I understand why you'd want that, and I'll agree to it, but I'd like us to set up boundaries. I don't want us to become overly possessive of each other. This should be about trust, not control. It was a reasonable request, and I realized that she was genuinely trying to find a balance. I agreed to her terms, and we both felt a sense of relief. There were still scars from the past, but maybe we could find a way to heal together. As time went on, I noticed Sarah was making a conscious effort to improve her communication. She began to check in with me throughout the day, sharing her thoughts and feelings, and it became clear that she was trying to create an environment of openness. One night, we were out on a dinner date, enjoying a peaceful evening together, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the progress we had made. Over a glass of wine, I looked into her eyes and said, "You know, I think we're really moving forward." Her smile lit up the dimly lit restaurant. "I do too, I'm proud of us." But just as I began to relax, my phone buzzed with a text message that sent a jolt of anxiety through me. It was from Mike. "Hey, it's been a while, just checking in on you. Hope all is well." I felt my heart race, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. I glanced at Sarah, who had paused mid-conversation, her eyes flickering to my phone, and I felt the tension rise. "Who's that?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's Mike," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, but I could see the wave of emotions wash over her face, fear, jealousy, and guilt all at once. "What does he want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, trying to balance my own racing thoughts. "He's just checking in. It doesn't mean anything. I'll respond and let him know I'm good." "Maybe you should just ignore him," she suggested, her anxiety bubbling up. "Why? I don't want to be rude." "We're adults. I can talk to whoever I want," I replied, feeling an unexpected surge of defiance. "But what if it brings up old feelings? It's too soon for that." I could see how much her past was haunting her. "You're right, it could be triggering, but I want you to trust me just like I'm trusting you. I won't let it affect us," I said, trying to reassure her. After a long pause, I sent a brief response. "Thanks for reaching out, I'm doing well." The message went through, and I felt a weight settle in the air. Sarah looked at me, her expression a mix of gratitude and concern. "Thank you for being honest. I don't want to seem controlling, but I guess I'm still learning how to cope." "Hey, it's a process for both of us," I said, reaching for her hand across the table. "Just like I'm still learning to trust you, you're still learning how to deal with your own insecurities." The conversation that followed was open and honest, and I was relieved to see that we could discuss our feelings without letting fear control us. We navigated the awkwardness together, setting boundaries that felt comfortable for both of us. But even in that moment of vulnerability, I realized that this journey towards healing was far from over. We had made progress, but I still had to remain vigilant, and she had to continue proving herself trustworthy. As we laughed and reminisced about fun memories, times that reminded me of the connection we once had, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could emerge from this stronger than we ever were before. As we finished our meal and walked hand in hand back to the car, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. We were both willing to work on ourselves and our relationship, and that was a step in the right direction. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the ghosts of our past still lingered. I had to remain cautious, aware that old habits die hard. The journey wasn't over yet. We still had to confront the challenges ahead. What I didn't know was how much those challenges would test our commitment to each other in ways we couldn't yet imagine. As spring blossomed into full swing, I found myself caught in an emotional push and pull. With Sarah, we had made significant strides, but the lingering shadows of her betrayal still haunted our relationship. Each day was a delicate balancing act between rebuilding trust and navigating the fear that would occasionally grip my heart. One afternoon, while I was at work, Sarah texted me to say she wanted to talk when I got home. I felt a knot of anxiety twist in my stomach. We had been doing so well, but the unpredictability of her request made me uneasy. I tried to shake it off, focusing on my tasks, but the anticipation hung over me like a storm cloud. When I finally got home, she was sitting on the couch, her expression serious. "Hey," I said, attempting to gauge her mood. "Hey," she replied, her voice low. "We need to talk about Mike." I felt my heart race, knowing this conversation was inevitable, but I hadn't expected it to come so soon. "Okay," I said, choosing my words carefully. "What about him?" "I've been thinking a lot about it," she continued, wringing her hands. "I know I hurt you, and I can understand how seeing his name would make you feel uncomfortable. I just wanted to assure you that I've cut ties with him completely. I don't want any lingering connections to that part of my life." Relief washed over me, mixed with a tinge of doubt. "You're serious? You really think that's what's best?" "Yes. I've realized that I can't keep running away from my mistakes. I need to face them and learn from them. I want to focus on us," she said, her eyes pleading for my understanding. There was a sincerity in her voice that struck a chord with me. "I appreciate that. I think it's a good decision, but I need to know you're committed to making our relationship stronger." "I promise. I'm all in," she said, her eyes glistening with sincerity. As we talked about her decision to cut ties with Mike, I felt a weight lift. It was a small step, but it signified so much more. It was a sign that she was willing to take responsibility and invest in our marriage. From that day forward, we made a conscious effort to communicate better. We began to prioritize our relationship, scheduling regular check-ins where we could voice our concerns, fears, and feelings without judgment. Surprisingly, I found that the more we spoke openly, the more I began to trust her. As summer approached, we decided to take a short trip to the coast, a vacation we'd hoped to have before everything imploded. The drive was filled with laughter and light banter, a reminder of the joys we had shared before the storm. The closer we got to our destination, the more I felt the weight of the past dissipate. We spent the days exploring picturesque landscapes, taking long walks on the beach, and rediscovering the little things that made our relationship special. One evening, we sat around a fire, the sun setting over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Look at that," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Isn't it beautiful?" "It is," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "You know, I've missed moments like this. I didn't realize how much I took for granted until now." "I feel the same. It's like I'm finally seeing everything in color again," I admitted. With the sound of the waves crashing in the background, we both took a moment to breathe in the beauty of the world around us. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to leave the past behind and embrace the future together. As the fire crackled, I turned to her, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. "Do you ever think about what we went through? I mean, do you feel like we've genuinely moved on?" She nodded slowly, the seriousness of the topic evident in her gaze. "I do. I think we've come so far, but I also know we have to keep working at it. I don't want to fall back into old patterns. I want to build something stronger with you, something that can weather any storm." Her words resonated with me. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I want that too. I want us to be stronger than we ever were." As we watched the fire flicker under the stars, I felt a newfound sense of trust cocooning us. We had faced the darkness and emerged on the other side, bruised but not broken. The rest of the trip was filled with laughter, connection, and a sense of renewal. We learned to navigate our fears together and celebrate our victories, no matter how small. It was a journey, but we were committed to taking it side by side. When we returned home, I felt like I was carrying a piece of our old selves back with me. The love, the laughter, and the promise of a future where we could grow together, free from the weight of betrayal. In the end, I learned that relationships require constant effort and vulnerability. It's not always easy, but I realized that love, when nurtured with honesty and open communication, can heal even the deepest wounds. Our bond was not only tested, it was fortified by the trials we faced. Moving forward, I knew there would still be challenges, but I also knew we would tackle them together, hand in hand. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. The strength of love lies not just in the highs, but in how we navigate the lows together.